a podcast about amazing people from an incredible state. Join Mike Broomhead for Amazing Arizonans, presented by Resolution Copper. Copper is essential to Arizona's economy and to America's future. Learn more at resolutioncopper.com.
Another episode of Amazing Arizonans, and I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite a long time. Former Governor Fife Symington, thanks for doing this.
I'm delighted.
You know, I've had the privilege of having lunch with you a couple of times, and I've learned a little bit about you. And I love some of the stories you have to tell. I want to talk. I don't know which direction we should go first. I want to maybe talk about the world you're in now. When you got done being governor, you went to culinary school.
Right.
Why?
Well, I thought it was important to do something different, and also something that would challenge me, and that I would enjoy. I mean, I really like a challenge, and I had this list of things that I was checking off, and in culinary school kept coming to the top of the list. So I decided to take the plunge and try it, and in the very beginning, I thought, Fife, I can't believe you made this decision, because culinary boot camp was really tough. Mopping the floors and cleaning the deep fryer. And of course, as a new guy, you get hazed.
Yeah.
I got hazed plenty. The chefs were betting.
And you had just been governor.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah, the chefs had this bet going that Symington would never finish the program. But when I heard that was cinched it. I was going to finish the program.
Did you already have a love and a passion for cooking?
I had an interest in it, but I discovered that I really had a passion for pastries.
Okay.
And baking. And that was a surprise. I mean, there was really no reason for it other than my bedroom in our old house in Maryland was right over the kitchen, and it was a wood frame house, so all the aromas would filter up, into my room. So that's probably what triggered it.
But your background, wasn't it land development?
Yeah, I build office buildings, warehouses, and the Ritz-Carlton at 24th and Camelback.
Okay.
Yeah, that my background is basically as an office building developer.
So that's one of the things with this podcast is so interesting is land development and building. Then I understand that transition that would interest you in politics, because you got to deal with stuff like this and issues and people. But the leap from there to culinary school, so much so that you opened a culinary school.
Yeah. Well, in my final block, it was a 1.5-year program to get my degree in culinary arts and restaurant management. And at the end of the program, the school that I was attending, Scottsdale Culinary, was sold to Cordon Bleu. And it was kind of a Wall Street play. And I watched very carefully as the transition went through. And I thought, I just think that I could start a culinary school and cut out a lot of the fluff and put together a program that really put the students first. So I got this idea in my final block of culinary school, and I pursued it. And I went and I hired a couple of the best chefs out of Scottsdale Culinary, Cordon Bleu, and we formed the school 22 years ago.
First time we had lunch was there. The food was spectacular, but watching the students and looking at the school behind the scenes, that was pretty amazing. To watch those students work that hard and the state-of-the-art facility that you have for them to learn in.
Yeah, we have a bunch of commercial kitchens, and it's a hub and spoke type of arrangement, and it's a first-class operation. And of course, the standards for food safety are very high, and we use a lot of product during the day, and whatever we don't use, we give to Waste Not to feed the homeless. And so the school's really prospering. We graduate probably, in the neighborhood of 150 students a year. It's an 8-month program.
Wow. And you were ahead of your time, because the world now stands on its head for chefs. I mean, you look at Gordon Ramsay and some of these guys that are just become celebrities in the world and if you look on Instagram, well, I'm a big social media guy, and the biggest response I've ever had to anything I've ever posted on my personal page is when I post that I've cooked something or that I am cooking something and I want advice from people on how do I make this better. It is it's not even close. That's what people respond to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not surprising. I mean, once you, one of the gifts of our culinary program is that you learn the classic French method, and that basically enables you to conquer any recipe. The logic of it, the organization, you learn how to approach any recipe, so you can cook classic French cuisine or anything from Italy, Asian food, whatever. The methodology that we teach allows you to basically tackle anything, and that sort of emboldens you.
Because there's a science.
Well, and there's a science, and it's also fun.
Oh, I start at this. I don't want to go down the whole thing just being about cooking, but I started braising and trying to mess with that a little bit in flavors and braising different meats and different. I've been doing just beef, not pork, but you're right. It's fun to just experiment and find different things. I went from using wine to using bourbon to use as a braising liquid, and
I'd like to be invited over.
Well, I don't. I'd be intimidated cooking for you, but
the bourbon sounds great.
It's great. And then tri-tip seems to be the meat that I love the most to braise right now.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm just saying that the fun. You're right. There's a lot of fun in it, along with the science of a recipe.
Have you tried sous vide?
No.
Because it's a wonderful technique because you never bust and overcook your protein if you do it properly.
Okay.
And it's cooking in a hot water bath.
Yeah, in a water bath.
Yeah, and in a vacuum sealed package and stuff, and you can always nail the perfect temperature for your meals. So I really enjoyed the sous vide.
My introduction to you, I moved here in 1995. So my first knowledge of you was as governor. And before we go any further, will you please tell the Phoenix Lights story? Because you know that that was one of the most famous moments in your time as governor.
Yeah.
Can you talk? Will you please tell that story?
Well, I'm a little hazy on the exact dates and times, but I just remember that when we were at the what I would call the hysterical point, there was a building hysteria going on, and people were calling in and everything. And when I got home from work, I went out in my car, which I wasn't supposed to do, and drove past the 51. There was a new park on the other side of the 51 up near Squaw Peak.
Yep.
Because I wanted to get out and I wanted to see the lights for myself and try to figure out what was going on. And I looked to the west over Luke Air Force Base, the white tanks, and didn't really see much. And then all of a sudden, there were a bunch of people around. It was very dark. Gasped and said, "Look at that! Look at that!" And they pointed up and just sort of whatever this thing was, it came right over Squaw Peak or Piestewa Peak.
Yeah,
and made no sound. It was it made you a chill run down your spine. I immediately thought this has got to be something out of the skunk works out of Area 51, but it was huge and quiet and just went right over us. And as you remember, it went from the northwest to the southeast.
Yep.
And also went across the flight pattern at Sky Harbor. And an America WestJet that was on final, the captain said it crossed in front of them and it was big enough to land on it, which is phenomenal. So I had my exposure, but I kept my mouth shut about it because those were the days if you said you believed in UFOs and things like that, you'd be heavily ridiculed if you were a public figure. And I had other battles to fight. So I saw something, and it felt otherworldly, I can tell you.
But tell us about the prank.
Oh, well, the prank was an effort. Understand, I'm a Trekkie, and so the prank backfired with some of the Trekkie community because they thought I was ridiculing them, and I really wasn't. What I was trying to do was create some levity around the situation to break the hysteria that was going on. So I called my chief of staff into the office, and I had unbeknownst to the rest of the staff, I had gotten this monster Martian costume from a store in Phoenix, and it was sitting in this chair to the right of the governor's desk. And my chief of staff at the time, Jay Heiler, under great protest, when I pointed at it, and I said, "You're going to wear that, and we're going to have this press conference, and we're going to spoof everybody."
So it was Jay that was in the costume?
Jay was in the costume.
I thought it was one of your security detail.
No,
it was Jay.
No, the security detail, DPS, played their role beautifully. Right. They had their guns, and it was a live TV thing, and the word was out that we captured the first alien, and the alien costume was really marvelous. So Jay looked at it and he said, I resign. I'm not going to do this. I resign. I said, Jay, you can't resign. He says, it's not part of my job description. I said, I've just changed your job description. Like, you got to wear this. So he did. He relented. And so, the rest is history. And I think it's probably the only thing I'll ever be known for is the spoof.
What was really hysterical about it was I know that some of the TV stations were upset because you got them. That they were expecting something serious. And when this happened, you had gotten them so good that I think a lot of them just were upset that they had been gotten so well.
Yeah, I think the producer at ABC was the one who was most irritated with us. But he later called back and said, I got to admit, that was really...
It's hilarious.
It was hilarious because the double doors leading into the governor's office or into the press room burst open, and you have the DPS armed to the teeth leading this this horrendous looking costume, Martian costume. And my friend Jay Heiler, he's never going to forgive me because he almost passed out because
that's what I heard. I heard that part of it.
Yeah, trouble breathing in the costume.
When you think about that, though, because the impression we had, as I thought it was hilarious, but we thought that you were just goofing on the idea of an extraterrestrial along with it, that it wasn't just breaking the tension, that you were making fun of the idea that there could be an extraterrestrial life, but you corrected that later.
Yeah, I corrected that some years later when I was out of office, and I didn't understand that the reaction of some was because they thought that I was ridiculing the whole concept of extraterrestrial intelligence or life. I mean, every time I look at the night sky, I just shake my head and sort of think about the human conceit that we think we're alone in the universe. Now, we're probably pretty hard to find and get to in our galaxy, but I'll tell you, there are a lot of surprises in the future, I'm sure.
Well, it seems like now that we're getting more and more information, and I have a close friend who is an absolute believer and has been for years and years and years, and is not obsessed, but is certainly someone that is very, very interested in this.
Yeah. What really got me going in the 80s was Carl Sagan. I got to know Carl Sagan. And I'll never forget his opener when he did his lecture at the Biltmore, and he had this the room's dark, and he had this magnificent picture on the wall of our galaxy, our spiral galaxy, and so he's quiet, and then he looks out at the audience and he says, "Who here would like to point to Earth? Show me where Earth is." And there's the silence. Of course, everybody's chicken. Nobody's going to hear with the great Carl Sagan, right? So he said, here, let me show you. And he took this laser light pen, and way off in the right, amidst billions of stars and stuff, was this little speck. And he said, that is Earth. And he said, now you know why we don't have a lot of visitation. We're very hard to find. And that was basically his theme. But he really believed in extraterrestrial existence.
When you look at your time as governor, did you ever imagine then, I would imagine as being a builder you might, but did you imagine when you were governor that you would see the valley, let's talk about the valley that we have now? Did you imagine that this would be such a destination and a place of such immense growth?
I felt the pace of growth in the early 90s and worked very hard to do everything that I could to help propel it. We brought Schwab in and American Express's expansions And
I worked on the American Express building when they was being built.
Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and of course, we heard that Hughes Aircraft was not happy in San Diego paying California taxes. And we went over there and did a side-by-side comparison and showed them if they moved to Tucson, they'd increase their business profit, their bottom line by 20% or some really great number. And we moved them. That's now the cruise missile capital of the world.
Wow.
Tucson.
Yeah.
So
when you look at where we've come,
but I was surprised by the growth.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I mean, it's much bigger than anything I ever anticipated. I am shocked. I mean, I built or owned the third house in Pinnacle Peak.
Oh.
And there was nothing out there.
Wow.
I was Jerry Nelson was the developer, and his right-hand guy, Doug Simonson, had a home. Jerry had a home, and I had a home. And it was a long commute to my office at 16th Street, but there was no traffic, so it wasn't a problem. But boy, the world has changed. I mean,
When was that?
That would have been in 72, 73, around the time of the great Arab oil embargo.
Mm-hmm.
So
I moved here in 1995. I came out on vacation in 1992, and I fell in love with Arizona. I grew up in Florida. And then I had an opportunity, some life changes that happened in 1994. And in February of 95, I got in my truck and drove to Arizona and never looked back. It has been the most beautiful. I tell people I love what I do, but I would quit this job to be the ambassador of Arizona if there was such a job, because I just love Arizona. And I think people come here, and I get it because it happened to me. I absolutely fell in love. And it was a no-brainer.
I did too. You know, my initial reaction when I came out here, I was in the Air Force, a brown bar, brand new officer. And the first 3 months, I was sort of looking askance at the architecture and at all the desert. Everything seemed dead to me, and you know, I didn't appreciate what I was looking at. And then there's this transformation, and I went back to visit my parents in Baltimore, and within 3 days, I felt claustrophobic. Everything is so foreshortened, you know, trees and stuff. You don't get the 80, 100-mile vistas and the sunsets. And I realized I was a goner. There was no way I was ever going to leave Arizona.
What motivated you to run for the governor's office?
Well, that's really a good question. I didn't have a plan originally to run for governor, but I got swept up into John Rhodes's campaign for governor against Rose Mofford, which I was his finance chair, raised a lot of money in the first couple of weeks, and then the Supreme Court ruled that no, there's no election. Rose Mofford's the governor. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't. I wasn't here then.
The succession. So there were a group of us sort of young Turks around Rhodes who were pretty disappointed about it. And Barry Goldwater was one of the driving forces at the time and was a very close friend. And we're up at his house at his behest, and he's sitting in that chair like the great chieftain, and he's looking around and he's saying, you know, it's time for new leadership in this state, and somebody in this group should consider running for governor. And we're all nodding our heads.
This is Goldwater.
This is Barry Goldwater, yeah. So I looked up and everybody's looking at me. And I looked at Barry and I said, Barry, there's no way I could get elected governor. I couldn't get elected dog catcher because I'm a real estate developer. And he laughed, and I'll never forget him waving his finger. He says, no, you got it all wrong. He said, you know, you're the perfect person to run from outside because of your business background, and it'll all work for you. And he said, and I'll be your campaign chairman if you want to do it.
Oh my gosh.
So that was a rather big nudge.
Now I have to travel this road about Barry Goldwater because I'm a little younger than you. My political understanding began with Nixon leaving office. I was a little boy, didn't understand what was going on, but I have a memory of that time. But it really was Jimmy Carter. And what you talked about, what was going on with oil at the time and gas lines. Reagan was the one where I was captivated.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And listening and going back and listening to Reagan speeches and Ronald Reagan giving credit to Barry Goldwater, that there would be no Ronald Reagan if it wasn't for Barry Goldwater.
That's right.
That's pretty amazing for you to have a friendship with someone that is that connected with what really would be the pillars of the Republican Party.
Yeah. Well, Senator Goldwater was a great friend of my father's. And my dad helped raise money for him on the East Coast when he ran for president. And when he was in the Senate, he would periodically come visit us on our farm in Maryland. And I was just a little boy. And I remember sitting in front of the fireplace in my dad's library, and Barry and my dad would be talking about international issues, the Russians, and in particular, and whether China should be admitted to the UN. I remember the debates that they'd have. And so I knew and corresponded with Barry really from the time I was a young teenager. And he always wrote me back. I've got a lot of his letters, which are really wonderful. And he was an inspiration, man of great courage and great integrity, and really the father of the conservative movement.
Well, when you look at, and I've gone back and listened a number of times to the A Time for Choosing speech that raised so much money that Reagan gave, talking about the Goldwater campaign, and my conversations. I was blessed to be friends. I mean, I had such a weird thing for me to say with John McCain.
Yeah.
And Senator McCain's love for Senator Goldwater, his office in D.C. with pictures all over the place, photographs that had been taken by Senator Goldwater and autographed. And there was a story behind all the photos to realize, for me, in my generation, a guy like John McCain was, at the time, I would think, along with Henry Kissinger, the foremost expert on foreign policy. And he gave so much credit to Senator Goldwater, not only for his career, but for his policy positions, and his political knowledge came from Senator Goldwater.
Yeah. John McCain was one of the great ones, and he had a pretty good relationship with Barry Goldwater.
That wasn't always the case, though, was it?
No. I was going to say there were times when there was some friction. I forget exactly what the reasons were. I think in sometimes that Barry felt that he was an outsider, and he came in and took John Rhodes's seat, and then took a Senate seat. And Barry was so steeped in Arizona history as his family and everything else that he kind of probably felt a little edgy about that. But they got along and did a lot of great things together for the state.
Well, I remember before I was in radio full time, when Senator McCain was the nominee for president, that the night before the election, he held his final rally at the courthouse steps in Prescott.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to do that as a tribute to Senator Goldwater.
Right.
And the times I'd spent talking with Senator McCain, he had nothing but great things to say about Senator Goldwater. And he even joked around one time that there were times when Senator Goldwater probably didn't have great things to say about him.
Yeah.
So at least he had a sense of humor about it.
Well, I think the history goes a little deeper. That you remember Senator John Tower from Texas? Mm-hmm. Tower was really a sponsor of John McCain's, and they were very close. And there was always a sense of rivalry between John Tower and Barry Goldwater as well. So, in politics, it's inevitable that, 80, 90% is going to be fine, and there's about 10% that isn't going to be fine, and you learn to live with it. So,
did you enjoy your time in politics?
I loved it.
Did you?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved campaigning. I'll never forget sitting in this Suburban outside of a Safeway department store, and my campaign manager, Jay Smith, says, "Now this is your initiation. You're going to go in there, and you're going to cold turkey walk up to people and introduce yourself and ask for them to vote for you." Now, that for me, the way I was brought up, I mean, this is sort of a transformation that would be very difficult, and was. So I trundled off and shaken all over, just my first foray in pressing the flesh, I guess is the way you put it. Mm-hmm. And it turned out okay. Only one person was rude. And I recovered my balance, and the rest is history. But it turned out that I really enjoyed politicking and meeting the people and working on the issues that were important to all the various communities around the state that make us such a great state.
Do you believe politics has changed, or has it always been the way it is now? We maybe just notice it differently, because it seems to me like we've never seen a more contentious time. At least in my lifetime, I've never seen it more contentious. But I also am a student of our country. And if you look at what was going on in the 1960s and the anti-war protests that were happening then, there seems like and the civil rights movement, that there's always been contention politically in the U.S.
You know, I think that I think you're largely correct about that. I mean, I think back, being from Maryland originally, Lincoln's journey to the White House when they tried to assassinate him in Baltimore, and he went through secretly in a train early in the morning. I mean, they didn't have social media in those days, and communication was a lot less rapid. And so there's always been undercurrents of violence throughout the American political environment. And I think what makes it worse today, though, is and leads to this sort of hyperactive vocalization that we see, is social media. Things are so rapid. People just say things that can be that they wish they could retract after they've said it, but it's too late. Mm-hmm. And it helps ramp up the emotions and stuff. So I think it's a more difficult political environment. But we've always had a tumultuous history politically in this country.
But were you prepared for the people that, not the people that didn't agree with you, but were you prepared for the people that seemed to not like you or despise you, that didn't even know you? Were you prepared for the other side to not just call you wrong, but dislike you because of your positions?
Yeah, I was. I understood that because my dad ran for Congress in Maryland in a district where the registration was 4-1 against him. And it was a heavily Democratic district, and I used to campaign with him.
Okay.
And on election night, when he got the hell beaten out of him, he took me in hand, and we walked into then Senator Danny Brewster's headquarters, and we walked right on in, and Dad congratulated him in Towson, Maryland. I'll never forget it. And so I was well aware of the contentious nature of that environment. Now, it never really bothered me. I had some fun with it when I was governor because if you'll remember, my first 2 years in office, we had a Democratic-controlled Senate, so I had a divided government.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah, and
was that the last time?
Yes. Yeah. After that, we took back a seat in southern Arizona, and then got control of both the House and the Senate. But the environment, I guess, as time went on, I just recognized that we inevitably have our differences, and you never really know somebody through the headlines and anything else. Mm-hmm. You learn that in life, that you don't really know somebody until you've really sat down and gotten to know them, had a meal or whatever. And there was a state senator who just absolutely crucified me on the floor of the Senate when I was in office for 3 or 4 days. I just inhabited the office. And he was going on and on and on because we had these speakers so I could hear what's going on the floor of the House and Senate. And he said, that's Symington. He's never been south of the river. He's a country club Republican. He doesn't care about the people and blah, blah, blah. They're just having a field day. I didn't know the guy. And so I called in my chief of staff and I said, why don't you invite him up? I'd like to meet him. And so they brought him up. He made time and came into my office, and he was very polite and said, Governor, it's really nice to meet you. I said, we've never met, have we? You don't really know me. And he said, that's right. No, we've never met. I said, well, how could you say things like that about me?
How did he handle that?
He laughed.
Yeah.
And we both chuckled because I was gaming him.
Yeah, of course.
later up, he ended up being on my staff later.
Oh, wow.
Running the outreach to the anti-gang task force.
When you bringing up politics now, when you talk within the party, I take heat when you look at the divide, because there is a segment of the Republican Party that is not a fan of the late Senator McCain.
Right.
And I have to say, he was very, very good to me as a human being. He treated me like a colleague and had no reason to. He was always kind to me. And we disagreed, and we would disagree about things, and he was always willing to debate me almost as if I was a colleague. And I admired that so much because he didn't owe me anything, but he was always open to a conversation. He would do town hall meetings knowing people were going to stand up and say things. But there's a divide for some reason that's very, very personal when you don't know that person as a human being. And it's odd to me. Is that odd to you?
Well, it's unfortunately fairly prevalent, I think.
It is. I think on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, definitely on both sides of the aisle. For instance, I know and knew Clinton pretty well.
Okay.
And just a lot of garbage was said about Clinton that I, as a Republican, I didn't say much about it, but I just knew that they misjudged him. He was one of the smartest guys to ever hold the office, and he'll go down in history as a fairly decent president, I think. And John McCain, I mean, his life story is so compelling that even if you have a disagreement with him on the issue, like I disagreed with him on his vote on Obamacare.
Yes, I did too.
I'd like to think that really he wasn't. He wasn't well. I would have advised him against that vote, but so we disagree on that. But that doesn't mean you dump on his grave and forget all the great things that he did for his country. And I mean, a true patriot. So I come down heavily on the side of admiration, and it's unfortunate that the party chooses to have a sort of a vilification wing. I've just never believed that that's a constructive approach.
Well, one of the things that I admire about you and the people that I've watched is the ability to stand up and look someone in the eye and tell them that they're wrong without being insulting. Because in the social media world we live in now, you're not just wrong, you're evil.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that bothers me when there are people that are able to have a civil debate, when you can stand by your position and not waver from it, but say to somebody, I think you're 100% wrong, and leave that room knowing that you still have a rapport with that person, I think is almost a lost art, because by nature in America, you have to demonize your opponent.
Yeah.
Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I do. It's very unfortunate. There's an aching lack of civility in American culture right now. But I'm also optimistic that the pendulum will swing back, because ultimately our system really will rise and fall on our ability to communicate our ideas to others who both support us and oppose us. And you have to have the ability to bring groups together, or you end up with such a fractured system that nothing's gonna happen, and tempers are gonna boil over and lead to insurrection. So, but this lack of civility is really a major problem.
When you look at your time as governor, what do you consider your biggest accomplishment or accomplishments?
Well, of course, they were on a tax-raising binge when I came in, and I sort of changed the debate and put tax cuts first, because basically respecting the average American family's ability to survive. And lower marginal tax rates was a big issue, and I got that sort of deeply embedded, I think, in everybody's psyche. Charter schools, I fathered that whole effort to create charter schools as a competitive model to the mainline public school. So I'm happy about that. And when I left office, I think I left over $1 billion surplus, which was unheard of back in those days.
That was a massive amount of money then, too.
Yeah. So, but it's my feelings are more generic. That I just really enjoyed the environment that I worked in. I enjoyed the people who were for me and who opposed me. I love the give and take of the debate. I love to be in that environment and fighting for good ideas and good substantive public policy. It was sort of that I really missed that.
Yeah. I want to shift, if you don't mind, back to what you're doing now with the school and with the culinary arts. And when you look at those students and you look at people, young people, and I think most of them are probably fairly young people that are going through these programs, do you talk with them about success? Because it doesn't matter what industry you're in, success, it usually doesn't happen by accident. Do you talk with them about being successful, whatever that looks like for them? Do you give them advice, or is it just they're students in your school and you just let them kind of do their own thing?
Well, I think the program that we have does a pretty good job instilling a strive for excellence.
Okay.
So that's how I would answer that question.
Okay.
Because you don't graduate from our school unless you have graduated from each sub level,
right?
And you've learned your knife skills. You know the mother sauces. You understand sautéing. You understand meat fabrication. You understand baking and advanced baking, and in not just understanding, but you do practicals every day, and until you get it right. So it's that striving for excellence, knowing that ultimately you'll be responsible for creating a menu for the public, and you're going to be serving your fellow man, and you want to be proud of your work. So we don't meet that directly head on. It's just part of the process that it gives you the education and background, and in fact, when you graduate, there's a tremendous sense of accomplishment because it's not an easy program.
No, and I've been and watched some of the creation. It is state of the art. It's beautiful, and the food is delicious. And what I noticed is they also learn front of the house.
Oh yeah, well it's restaurant management and culinary arts. And we teach the teamwork between the front of the house and the back of the house. A lot of restaurants are dysfunctional because the cook staff don't like the wait staff,
right.
And there's a war going on. Well, we explain that that's not the way you do it. You don't yell and scream either in the kitchen. You have orderly communication, and you keep your eye on the process and make sure nobody stumbles. And if somebody's having trouble, you go in and you help them. You don't yell at them. And
it teaches empathy and how to, if you are a chef and that's what you want to be, but you have to understand how what you're doing affects the front of the house and vice versa. And if you can instill that in them, doesn't it make it for a better working relationship?
Yes, it sure does. Yeah. And it brings me back to when I was at Scottsdale Culinary. It was my turn to be the maitre d' and work and wait on tables. And this elderly couple by the window, I'll never forget it. And I walked up and I said, I'd like to take your order, and so I'm busy taking the order, and the older guy looks at his wife and looks at me and says, that looks like Fife Symington, and I didn't say a word, and he said, and I wouldn't want to be Fife Symington.
Oh no!
Yeah. So I just sat there, and then all of a sudden his wife looks up at me and she puts her hand over her mouth and says, "Oh my God, it is Fife Symington." And I was laughing, and I said, "Well, I guess no, I am Fife Symington. I don't have a twin brother, so it's definitely me."
Right.
It was really a hilarious moment.
So, and it's good that you have a good sense of humor about that, because had you not, and he said, "I wouldn't want to be that guy."
Yeah.
That would have been an awkward moment.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
Yeah. Well, the thing about waiting on tables as a server that I enjoyed is you really get to see somebody's real colors. You can tell whether they're a nice person or they're not a nice person, if they care or they don't care. You really, I don't know what it is about that, but that was a meaningful experience waiting on all those tables for 6 weeks. It was really something.
I had my first job when I was 12 years old, and I was a dishwasher in a restaurant. They paid me under the table, and then they made me a busboy. So I was out in the front of the house bussing tables. But when I got a little older, I took a job at another restaurant, and that's when I really started to learn to cook. But I went from a busboy, they called it an attendant, which was I was bringing the water, and I was more interactive with the tables. And I loved every second of it because you never knew who you were going to meet. You didn't know if they were going to like you, if they were not going to like you, if they were going to be rude. And I enjoyed, even when they were rude, I thought it was hilarious.
You got a great attitude.
Right. Don't you think? That's
Sure.
It's like you have no idea. And what other scenario is there where you're walking up to strangers all the time?
Yeah.
And I loved it. I was serious when I said to you, I'm going to be one of the students in your school someday. I think part of the fact is that I don't need to work in a restaurant now. So, because then it doesn't feel like a job, but I would in a heartbeat want to go and do that again. I just love it.
Yeah, it was challenging in the beginning, and I ended up really enjoying it. Yeah. And I remember working in Franco's restaurant, doing my internship, and I was paid $8.50 an hour, and I was in the back of the house, picking lettuce and washing dishes and doing all that sort of stuff, and then moved up onto the line, which was really kind of thrilling in a restaurant environment.
Challenging.
Very challenging. And I wasn't a young guy then.
Yeah.
So
did people, because you had to be recognized everywhere you went. So there had to be people in that kitchen that would walk around the corner for the first time and see you and go, the governor is watching, or the former governor is washing dishes. I mean, I know Governor Ducey fairly well. I can't imagine, you know what I mean, walking into a scenario where I'd be working side by side in a kitchen with the former governor.
Yeah. Well, I was working side by side next to Jesus, who had 7 children, and his family lived part here and part in Hermosillo, Mexico.
Yeah.
So it was really great people. They were scared to death when I came in because of immigration and naturalization.
Yeah.
I am, the gobernador. And but we all became fast friends. It was really a great experience.
How do you want to be remembered? Is that important to you?
I just don't dwell on that. I really don't dwell on that. I'd like to think that people would appreciate the good things I did as governor, and help change lives, make my community a better place to live for everyone. But I don't get too introspective. I got to worry about my next meal, what I'm going to put together, and my wife Rebecca loves to cook also, so we sort of double team the menus, and I live in a good life day to day. Had my 80th birthday this August.
Wow!
So
that's awesome. It's funny. I had the opportunity to meet you, and I think it was your son who reached out.
Yes, Fife.
Right, Fife.
Fife the fourth.
The fourth.
Yeah.
And we met at the culinary school.
Yeah.
I remember so looking forward to that lunch just because of the stories, because of the background and the stories. I've fallen in love with Arizona, but I don't know, obviously, the days of the growth that happened here with Senator Goldwater, but also you look at how Scottsdale was developed and the people that had their hands in the development of Paradise Valley and the places now that have become so grown in and but back then this was really the Wild West.
Yeah.
And I love those stories.
Yeah. I remember when I got out of the Air Force in the early 70s, I ended up representing Eastern Airlines and the Lincoln Property Company, Trammell Crow companies, the 3 companies together, tried to buy the Biltmore. And Tally Industries won in the end with an all-cash offer. But I delivered an offer which was cash and a stock offer to the Wrigley family. And we didn't make it, but I spent a year working on subdividing the Biltmore. It was 1,000 acres, and the hotel was kind of a master's degree program in real estate. And the guy that who took me under his wing in this whole thing, his name was Lou Huck, and he was a Brooklyn lawyer who represented Larry Rockefeller. And,
oh my gosh!
And he helped develop all the great rock resorts, Mauna Kea, things like that.
Wow!
And it just boggles my mind, the growth at 24th and Camelback and the Biltmore back in the early 70s. That was all open desert.
One of the people that have been a guest here on the podcast is Jerry Colangelo.
Sure.
And to speak with him and his perspective on the development of what's happened here, the big role that the Suns played in putting Phoenix on the map nationally because they were such a big franchise, but his vision of development here and what could happen, and to get a perspective of somebody else like you that was involved in it. It's an amazing thing it has to be an amazing thing to watch what's become from where you started.
Yeah, for me, the real shocker was I developed a group of office buildings at the northwest corner of Scottsdale Road in Lincoln.
Yep.
Okay. That's now, they knocked them down and they built this big apartment project.
Yeah, that big condo that's being built right now.
Right. Yeah. But before that, there were a whole bunch of office buildings in there, which my partner and I developed back in the mid-'70s. And they were the first office buildings step out from downtown Scottsdale. And we were told by members of the city council that they're going to give us the zoning, but we're going to go bankrupt. They'll never lease a square foot. And I should have learned my lesson early. We opened our doors. We were full. The growth had already happened.
Right.
Things happened with that kind of rapidity. It's amazing. The growth here is astounding.
Look at what Sam Fox has done with the Global Ambassador. With that complex, again, was office buildings on that corner, what that's transformed into.
Yeah, Jim Patrick developed all those office buildings originally, including one that went down in the ground.
I didn't know who. I don't think I knew him.
No,
or knew of him.
Yeah. He was probably the first developer of office buildings in the Camelback corridor.
And what this has all become, and I hope that people are as interested in this as I am, because I look around and I've seen the changes myself. So I have a rental. The one rental house I have is at 36th Street in Thomas. So I would take 32nd Street north to Lincoln and to get here to this building, and then I would take Lincoln west to get to where we are. And just in the 7 or 8 years watching where Tarbell's is and that massive apartment complex that's been built around it.
Right. That
kind of thing that just looks like it's popping out of the ground. The new development right there at 32nd Street in Camelback on the northwest corner and what's happening there.
Yeah.
That this has become such a destination that people just can't get here fast enough.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, in 1990-91, in my first election, I think that the total vote from all sides was like 1.2 million, the voting pool. Yeah. People actually voted, okay? And I think in Ducey's last election, and he was a great governor, by the way, the voting pool was 2.4 million or something like that. So from 1990 to whatever, 2020.
Yeah.
Think about that.
It's incredible.
That's incredible growth.
It is.
Yeah. And it seems to be a pretty good quality growth, too, which is important.
Well, the managed growth part of it, and I think Arizona's done a good job with that. And one of the things I was always impressed by here, because where I grew up is much different, is the street layouts, but also the development, the infrastructure of the freeways. I've watched the 60 get completed. I watched the 51 get completed. Both 202s, the 101, the 303, and it seems like that managed growth has been excellent. Our freeway system is something that I think is terrific and it's got to be a big enticement to people that want to come here, that you're not sitting in traffic like you are in LA.
Right. Well, we hope that we never get to the L.A. Yeah. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in South Florida.
Okay.
I grew up on the Gulf side. Fort Myers is the town I grew up
Tyndall Air Force Base.
Yeah, it's near there.
Near Tyndall.
Yeah.
That's where I did my initial training.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So when you look at where we are, do you think Like what's left for us to do? We've now got TSMC in the North Valley. We've now become kind of the chips capital of the country. What would you like to see Arizona do next?
Well, because of the chip factories and everything else like that, that puts us on the international missile map.
Yeah.
I hope we have good anti-missile systems.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine you're right.
Yeah.
But Luke Air Force Base, you were there.
Yeah, Luke. Yeah, I was at Luke. Yeah. Well, we need to continue the sophisticated planning of the freeway system, because it really allows quality growth to occur. Mm-hmm. It'll follow the highway system, and we need to continue to fight for open space amidst the development, like the Desert Preserve initiative that I helped launch back in the early 90s. We took some state trust land and set it aside. So now it's Scottsdale Preserve. I often think of New York City and Central Park. Mm-hmm. You need to have your Central Parks.
Sure. Because
otherwise, if you don't do it on the front end and plan for it, then you're going to lose it. And that's one of the allures of a lot of the development, I think, in the valley, is it's well planned. There's open space. There's even a clever use of water. Mm-hmm. And as long as we continue to emphasize quality and conservation and open space, we'll be okay.
Is it true that in early development plans that Bethany Home Road was supposed to be a freeway going east and west?
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, because there was a freeway called the Paradise Freeway, which is what you're talking about. And it was going to come from the west, go right through the Biltmore, 24th and Camelback.
Oh, my
area.
gosh.
Yeah, it was going to come through. And ADOT had purchased the right-of-way and spent about $1 billion. Well, when I came into office, I'll never forget the meeting I had with the ADOT guys. We had the bridges to nowhere, which were the 101 bridges that we built to secure the lease, but they weren't connected. So the 101 was bifurcated, you remember?
I do.
Yeah. So I determined to sell back the right-of-way and knock off the Paradise Freeway, because it was just nuts to drive it through the Biltmore area. And I remember telling the group, I said, I'm going to remember on my tombstone, it's going to say he killed Paradise. So we took the $1 billion we resold all the property, but got rid of it. Took the $1 billion, and then we completed the 101 with it.
Yeah, I remember the 101 going in, and I'm talking about on the east side of town.
Yeah.
I remember that development because I was in this is how much smarter you are than I am. When I moved here in the mid 90s, I was a service electrician. So I was driving around in a van all over the place fixing things. And I worked for a company in Mesa. So I spent a lot of time in the East Valley. And I remember driving in Gilbert. And back then there wasn't a lot of freeway, but I was taking the roads through Gilbert and the East Valley towns. And there would be 4x8 sheets of plywood where people had painted lots for sale.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, who would ever live out here?
Yeah. Yeah.
If I had had the forethought, I'm sure a lot of people feel that way, but 5 acres, I could have retired.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, just look at the values of residential real estate in the valley all over.
Yeah.
Supply and demand. A lot more demand than there is supply.
But the difference between 1995 30 years. In 30 years, I would have never imagined that we would see Santan Valley incorporate, that Queen Creek would have its own police department.
Yeah.
It's incredible growth.
It's extraordinary.
It is.
It's extraordinary. And it's quality growth, too. I mean, we're not building future slums. I mean,
no.
It's very impressive. And then, of course, I think the state's dealing pretty effectively with the water issue, too. I know it gets knocked around, people saying we're going to run out of water. We're not going to run out of water. It's an allocation problem.
Well, look all the way back to, SRP, and that dam system.
Yeah.
And what was then how to preserve water, and then the Central Arizona Project, and then what we've done with water capturing and water storage. We have, going back generations, out of necessity, done these things that have been built upon, don't you think?
Yes, yeah. And of course, I think that still about 80% of our water is consumed by agriculture. Mm-hmm. And so most people think that development means we're squandering our water resources or diminishing them. But in fact, by the urbanization process, you're getting a more efficient use of the water.
Senator Kyle taught me that, because I would have thought the other way around. But he also talked about when you look at cotton and you look at alfalfa hay, they are such water-intensive crops that when you replace those with housing, you're actually, or with development, you're actually gaining.
Right. Speaking about Senator Kyle, he is, without a doubt, one of the really great U.S. senators, one of the best that's ever represented this state.
I agree.
And a tremendous leader in national defense. That may not be as well known, but he's really, in my estimation, one of the really great U.S. senators.
Yeah, his time on the Judiciary Committee, I asked him one time that his name had been mentioned for the Supreme Court. And what I thought typified how humble he was as a man, said, "No way." And I said, "Why not?" And he said, "I've spent my entire career making policy. And then they're going to ask me to take off my policy hat and look at something else from a constitutional standpoint, and I don't know that I could do it justice." Now, I'm paraphrasing his answer, but imagine a man being so humble that he said, "I don't know that I would be able to fulfill the obligation of being a Supreme Court justice."
He knew what he was good at, and he was really good.
But amazing.
Yeah, I think very highly of John. He's a terrific person.
I want to say thank you. I know you're very busy. I just appreciate my time with you, and in our conversations when we've been able to sit down and have lunch. I just thought, and I know that people are going to be compelled because you're such a wealth of information on Arizona history, but you've led such an interesting life. I mean, developing a real estate developer to governor of the state, to culinary arts. I just think that it's an incredible story, and I appreciate you sharing.
You're very kind in your comments, and I really appreciate being invited onto your program.
It's great. I love being able to.
I think you do a great job, by the way. I think you're a great voice of reason, and we're lucky to have you.
Well, I don't know about that, but I appreciate it.
No, we're lucky to have you.
Well, Governor, thank you for coming by.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for watching the episode. Watch the rest of them. Let us know what you think, and let us know who else should be on with us on Amazing Arizonans.
Thanks for watching Amazing Arizonans, presented by Resolution Copper. Tap the button in the middle to subscribe to KTAR News.